saying that James Carville is a barely functioning with nothing left of value in this world. I'm not saying that at all. I'm also not saying it's pointless to tar and feather him because he still sheds his skin twice a year. And I'm also not saying if James Carville choked to death on one of his morning feedings of live mice, he wouldn't be missed. Wow, it sure is fun to not say things.
Greg Gutfeld didn't just debate James Carville. He dismantled him. It wasn't even close. It felt like watching a stand-up comedian roast an old politician who still thought he was in the 90s. Carville came into the conversation armed, with outdated talking points, condescending remarks, and a tone that screamed, "I know better than you." But Gutfeld was ready. With his sharp wit, calm demeanor, and relentless sarcasm, he turned the whole moment into a live takedown that was as funny as it was brutal. Carville thought he was bringing fire, but Gutfeld brought the whole forest fire. Carville started the segment by doing what he always does, talking down to the American people. He called Trump supporters brain dead. He said people attending rallies were basically hopeless. He didn't say it with concern, he said it with disgust. And that's what set the tone. He wasn't there to connect with regular Americans. He was there to scold them, to shame them, to remind everyone how much he hates the movement that threatens his comfortable place in the political system. And that's when Gutfeld stepped in. Greg didn't even raise his voice. He didn't need to. Instead, he laughed. He laughed because everything Carville said sounded like a badly written script from a political drama no one watches anymore. Carville, the once celebrated Democratic strategist, still talks like it's the Clinton era. He uses the same phrases, the same tone, and expects people to still believe him. But people have moved on, and that's exactly what Gutfeld pointed out. In one line, he made it clear, this isn't the 90s anymore. James, nobody's buying the cassette tape of fear you keep selling. It only got worse from there. Carville's biggest mistake wasn't just being out of touch, it was thinking. He was still the smartest guy in the room. He launched into a loud rant about the radical right, blaming them for every problem in the country. But Gutfeld calmly responded by pointing out the real radical ideas. He asked, is it radical to think men can't get pregnant? Is it radical to think kids shouldn't be at drag shows? Is it radical to want safety in your neighborhood? Gutfeld didn't yell. He didn't insult. He just asked the questions. Carville refused to answer. And Carville didn't answer them. Instead, he tried to flex his experience. I've been in politics longer than you've been alive, he said. But Gutfeld smiled. He replied, being around for a long time doesn't mean you're right. Just means you've had more time to be wrong. That one hit hard. You could see Carville's face tighten. This smug grin faded. The moment of silence after that line spoke louder than any of Carville's angry rants. Gutfeld continued by saying what everyone was thinking. Carville isn't angry because he sees danger. It's angry because people aren't listening to him anymore. It's not warning the public, he's begging them to stay scared. Scared people are easier to control, easier to convince, easier to push toward big government. But the people aren't scared anymore. They're tired, and they're smart enough to see through the game. That's what Gutfeld exposed. He didn't just humiliate Carville, he exposed the system behind him. Carville kept trying to make his point by yelling about democracy. He claimed the country was on the verge of collapse. He blamed conservatives for everything. But Gutfeld wasn't having it. He leaned back, smiled, and said, "You've been saying the sky is falling for 30 years. At some point, we stop believing the weatherman who keeps getting the forecast wrong." It was simple. It was honest, and it cut right through the noise. Then Carville made another mistake. He called out his own party. He admitted that young people and minority voters were walking away from the Democrats. And instead of asking why, he insulted them, said they were falling for fake messages and not smart enough to understand. Gutfeld couldn't believe it. You're losing support, and your response is to call the voters stupid. He asked, maybe they're not the problem? Maybe your message is? Carville kept spiraling. He started blaming Russian bots, misinformation, and even TikTok for people not trusting his side anymore. But Gutfeld brought it all back to basics. If people don't trust you, maybe stop lying to them, he said. And with that, the argument was done. Carville had nothing left but noise, and Gutfeld stood there, calm and confident, holding up the truth for everyone to see. Carville's entire strategy was built on fear. He talked about climate disasters, economic doom, and threats to democracy. But Gutfeld exposed the truth. Carville had been making the same predictions for decades, and none of them came true. He was like a broken record, stuck on repeat, while the world had moved on to streaming. If you've been wrong for years and now you want applause for being loud, Gutfeld asked? No thanks. Then came the final blow. Carville tried to pivot to unity. He said the country needed to come together. But Gutfeld wasn't going to let that slide. You don't get to insult half the country and then ask for a group hug, he said, and he was right. Unity doesn't come from shaming people. It comes from listening to them, respecting them, and treating them like adults. Carville has forgotten that. Gutfeld reminded him. The moment wasn't just a win for Gutfeld, it was a turning point. It showed that the old ways of scaring voters, yelling on camera, and pretending to care don't work anymore. People want real talk. They want facts, okay? And they want leaders who treat them with respect. Carville couldn't do that. It with a smile, a joke, and the truth. And the audience noticed. Social media exploded. People weren't just laughing, they were cheering. They saw in Gutfeld what they wish more people in politics had, the ability to tell the truth without fear. Carville came in expecting a debate. What he got was a wake-up call, and he didn't take it well. The eruption wasn't from passion, it was from panic. Panic that the world had changed and he hadn't. He kept interrupting, repeating the same points louder and louder as if volume could make up for substance. But the more Carville shouted, the more it became clear he was losing control. Gutfeld, on the other hand, never lost his cool. He didn't need to match Carville's shouting. Instead, he responded with calm humor and sharp logic. Like a teacher watching a student throw a tantrum after getting an F, Gutfeld said. You don't get to call people names for 20 years, then ask why they stopped listening to you. Line shut down the whole energy in the room. Even Carville supporters had nothing to add. From that point on, it was like watching someone try to climb out of quicksand while wearing cement boots. Carville tried to pivot to race, gender, class, and every other topic that might distract from the real issue. His ideas were old. His tone was bitter and his relevance was fading. He even tried to throw in a comment about far-right radicals. But it fell flat, Gutfeld reminded him. Your party is the one putting parents on FBI watch lists. Your side is the one trying to jail people for sharing memes. So, tell me again, who's the real extremist here? What made Gutfeld's takedown so effective was that he never made it personal. He didn't insult Carville's looks or past. He stuck to ideas. He focused on the words being said and the facts behind them. That's what made it sting so much. Carville wasn't being attacked, he was being exposed. And exposure hurts more when the spotlight shows just how little you've adapted to the world around you. Carville's final desperate move was a long speech about how America is losing its soul and being pulled into darkness. He waved his hands, raised his voice, and stared into the camera like he was performing in a play. Gutfeld waited for him to finish, then leaned forward and said, the only thing dark here is your ability to read the room. Laughter erupted. Even some of the pundits on the panel cracked a smile. It was the moment Carville realized he wasn't winning. He was being humored like a grumpy grandpa at a family dinner. But Gutfeld wasn't done. He moved in for the real. Messaged the message that needed to be said. He explained that this wasn't just about Carville. It was about a political class that refuses to move forward. A group of people who still think fear works better than facts, and that arrogance is the same thing as authority, Gutfeld said. People aren't tired of politics. They're tired of being treated like they're too dumb to understand it. That hit hard because it was true. He continued by pointing out the growing disconnect between elites and regular Americans. While people are struggling to buy groceries and pay rent, Carville is on TV yelling about drag shows and climate panic. While small towns are falling apart, he's writing think pieces about fascist dog whistles. Gutfeld asked, when's the last time Carville even talked to someone outside his own bubble? The silence that followed said everything. Gutfeld also reminded viewers that scare tactics don't work like they used to. The old threats, racism, sexism, Russian interference, have been used so often they've lost meaning. Cried wolf so many times, Gutfeld said. People have stopped looking up from their phones. That line summed it all up. Carville and others like him are still using a script that stopped working years ago. And what made it even more brutal was that Carville didn't seem to realize it. He actually thought he was still the wise elder statesman, the guy with all the answers. But the truth was right there on the screen. He looked lost, frustrated, and completely disconnected. And Gutfeld didn't have to shout to show it. He just kept bringing up facts, asking honest questions, and holding up a mirror. Eventually, Carville tried one last pivot. He said that the Democratic Party needed to get back to its roots. He blamed messaging problems and said they just needed better slogans. Gutfeld smiled again and asked, so the problem isn't your ideas, it's your marketing. That was the final nail. Because it showed Carville still didn't get it. The country isn't rejecting the way he talks. They're rejecting what he's selling. As the segment ended, you could see it on Carville's face. The anger had turned into confusion. He wasn't used to being challenged so directly, and certainly not by someone who could outthink and outjoke him at the same time. Gutfeld didn't just win the argument. He exposed a failing system, a decaying mindset, and a political class that thinks yelling louder will make people forget their failures. It wasn't just a roast, it was a warning shot. A clear message that if the old guard doesn't adapt, they'll be left behind. Carville, once feared for his sharp tongue and ruthless strategy, looked like a man shouting into the wind. Meanwhile, Gutfeld stood tall not because he shouted louder, but because he made more sense, and viewers across the country noticed. Social media lit up. Clips went viral. People quoted Gutfeld's lines, laughed at Carville's meltdown, and shared the video like it was a moment of national therapy. It wasn't just entertaining. It felt like justice. Like someone finally said what everyone else was too polite to say: the emperor has no clothes and the political class has no clue. By the end, Carville was done. His points had collapsed, his voice was tired, and his presence had faded into the background. Gutfeld, on the other hand, looked like he was just warming up. He didn't just survive the debate, he owned it. And in doing so, he gave the audience something they hadn't seen in a long time: truth, humor, and the courage to say what needed